All right. So I have a question for you. This is something that I'm sure people are going to want to know because they're going to hear the podcast. And yeah, they're going to understand a little bit about you. But can you do me and every one of the listeners a favor and take maybe 30 seconds, a minute to tell who you are at the core so people will know a little bit more about you?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll start off with that. Um, I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and full time digital nomad. My family and I travel around the world, and I get to spend every single day with my son and my husband, doing a business and living a life that I'm extremely passionate about and that I enjoy day in and day out. So it's kind of a high level overview of who I am.
I definitely understand that there, and I sincerely appreciate that answer because a lot of times we forget to tell people who we are. But hang on for one moment, and I will be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, hey, thank you all for coming to another episode of Redesign Your Life, the podcast that is all about telling you that you have the ability to break some of societal norms, right? You can do what you want to do. You don't have to do that 80-hour a week and spend less time with your family. You can just make a choice to start that process, but it all starts with you. I sincerely appreciate you all for listening to this episode, and I want to thank you all once again for coming. And we sincerely appreciate it. So let's jump into this episode because y'all know me. I like to get straight into it. None of that fluff. Let's get right down to it. Today we have Megan, who's going to be talking about some ways that she worked to redesign her life as well. So, Megan, how are you
Hello.
doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm excellent, man. Thank you so much for first being here. I am a very authentic person, and my
Mhm.
audience knows I am someone who believes in we're going to make mistakes, so I just push through it. We're going to live life, though. I don't pretend to be perfect and have everything together. My life is a little crazy sometimes, also. And we had a little um, mix up in our scheduling and everything, but I
Yeah,
am so glad that you're here today. I see some trees behind you and the wind blowing. Where are you
yeah,
at right now? Because it looks sunny and beautiful.
it is. I'm actually in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, right now. And then in a week, who knows? But that's where we're at today.
Yes, I love that. When you were saying that thing earlier about digital nomad, I was like,
Yeah.
they're traveling. And that's one of the things my wife and I love to do.
Hmm.
We take our son sometimes, depends on where we go.
Hmm.
We traveled to Europe last year and we didn't take
Yeah.
him because he was still, or actually 2 years ago, he was still a little too young. He's
Hmm.
10. And for
Hmm.
that trip, we just didn't think he would take it all in. We wanted to really have that to be a moment for us, especially for me, because I had planned a proposal to like redo it, not the, what is that called?
Like
Not the first one.
vow
The,
ceremony, like a.
yeah, yeah, like to just relive that thing.
Hmm.
And so I initially proposed to her on top of the Eiffel Tower. And so I was
Oh,
like, okay, let me
love
just kind of
that.
do that again. So, so question for you though. Most people, when they hear digital nomad, they have,
Mhm.
maybe one or two thoughts. Can you kind of break it down a little bit more on that? And then maybe just touch just a little bit on what you guys do as a family. I know we don't want to get too much into business, but maybe just a little bit so some people in the audience may say to themselves, that kind of sounds like a situation I'm in. So, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So ever since I met my husband, you could have asked us whether we were in the room together or apart, what was one of our life goals, and it was to visit 100 countries before we died. Um, and we tried for years to have my son. It didn't work out. We gave up, and then we finally had my son. I went through some different things that we'll get into later on, but it gave us the push to realize that we want my son to experience it all. And so our goal shifted, and our goal is to have my son reach 100 countries before he turns 18. And we believe that the best form of education is a hands-on approach, and so we want him to learn about the world by experiencing the world. And so that's kind of what started this and started our really our journey of traveling with him every day, day in and day out. He's fairly young. He's 4.5, and I think he's at 17 or 18 countries now. So we're well on our way to our goal. But for me, being a digital nomad was having the flexibility to not only spend time with my son and educate my son, wherever we are in the world, but also to be able to work my business and support other small business owners with the flexibility of being able to travel and make sure that my family is my number one priority. That's kind of how we got
Absolutely.
into it.
Yeah, I love that because when you were kind of going through that story, it was some parts of that was resonating with me, and I am a firm believer in what I tell my son is memories over money. Right, my wife and I, we both tell him like, but you still need money to make the memories, boy.
Yeah.
So, but I always kind of put this story in his mind that I want him to be 35 and I want him to be with his kids or whoever his partner is, whatever. And I want him to be like, you know what? Let's go to this city, or this is where my dad used to take me fishing, or just
Hmm.
something that reflects back onto him that makes him smile in that moment and love. And it's part of it for me is because I didn't experience that as a kid, and
Yes.
I love this thought. And then I'm gonna see your point of view on this. I hear often a lot of parents and a lot of people, and I firmly believe, hey, do what works for you. There's no playbook. Parenting is different for every person, every situation, etc. But I'm a firm believer when I hear parents say, I want to give my kid everything that I never got, right? I don't fully believe in that. I don't subscribe to that myself. But here's the reason why. Because part of that is what made you who you are, made you
Hmm.
strong because you went through those struggles. I believe I want to teach my son the things that I was never taught. I wasn't taught the financial literacy. I wasn't taught how to cook. I wasn't taught how to work on a car or a vehicle. So we take classes. We take cooking classes. My wife and I. We do those kind of things. So
Hmm.
what
Love it.
was the moment for you and your husband? What was that fulcrum point that made you guys say, you know what, we want to travel? Like you said, we want him to experience this kind of stuff. Was it because you didn't get to travel, or what kind of took you down that road?
Yes. So I will definitely say I was similar to you. I did not travel at all. A family vacation was 3 days at a Holiday Inn across the state because we had a soccer tournament or something with sports, right? My parents worked every day, they worked typical jobs, and that was the only vacations that we could afford or the time that they had off. So we definitely did not travel as a family. My husband traveled a little bit more, but we realized fairly early into having my son, especially with all the toys and all the things that he would get because he was the first grandbaby, he was our only child, he was definitely spoiled. And we just kind of subscribed to the idea that less is more. And we started asking people before we began traveling of give him an experience rather than give him a toy, and better yet give him an experience with you. Yeah, he's not going to remember it, and when he's 20 he won't be able to speak about it, but we retain how we felt, right? And so I think it's important for him to have those experiences as he grows with the people he loves, and that's kind of where it started. And then, as we realized we were going to start traveling, we realized material things mean nothing. My son is in a carry on suitcase and has 10 pairs of shirts, 10 pants, you know what I mean, socks and underwear, and Legos and Magnetiles. And he is 4 years old and doesn't ask for things because he knows, and we've always valued that experiences are more important. And he lives by that and he's okay with it. And we let him play with things when we get the opportunity to, but he's okay walking away with it because tomorrow we get to go to the beach and the next day we're in the jungle and the day after that we're on a boat. So
Yeah, it is. Oh man, you're hitting home in so many ways because, and I can tell you, so our son is 10 now, and we kind of started that process. We haven't taken him to the out of the country yet, but we've taken him probably well, not every, but most of the states. I'd probably say he has not been to maybe about 10, 12 states so far.
Yeah.
But I always love it because there'll be moments where just out of the blue, we'll be watching TV or something, and then he'll go, "Hey, mom, do you remember when we did such and such in that place?" And I'm like, "What? What is he talking about?"
Yeah.
And then it clicks to me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, we did visit there. How does he remember
Hmm.
that?" So, but I love that because he he is experiencing so many things. And matter of fact, I even talked about this on one of my last episodes. I forgot. I think it was episode 89 or whatever. And I said that I took him out of school because
Hmm.
I trust me, I believe in the education. I love that, but I also believe life is an education, like this moment.
Yeah.
So I didn't let him go to school one day. I took him and we went to eat Father Dad Day, whatever, just out to eat, have a little
Hmm.
fun. And when we were driving back, he was like, "Dad, you know what? I'm gonna tell all the kids at school tomorrow that they had to go to school and that was so bad for them, but I got to hang out with you today and I absolutely loved it." And at that moment, I think I was at a red light and I kind of had to turn my head away because I was starting to tear up a little bit. But
Yeah.
those are the moments that the bond is brought with. So, all right,
Hmm.
so now we've kind of got the backstory a little bit. Now let's talk about a moment that you decided, and how are you now starting the process of redesigning the life, or not necessarily redesigning, but just continuing that momentum. What was one of the moments that made you say, you know what, I need something different than what life says I'm supposed to have?
Yeah. So we definitely did completely redesign our life. So I worked in corporate America. I was the breadwinner for our family. We had the $1 million house, the Mercedes, the Louis Vuittons. I mean, I had it all. And I was, I remember I walked into a room one day and I couldn't remember why I walked into that room, which is something I think we all have experienced, right? Except this was like the sixth or seventh time it happened to me. And right after that, I called up to do an approval for a transaction for one of my clients. And I couldn't remember my username, I couldn't remember my password. I had to get someone else involved. And I started my career fairly young and I was fairly successful. And it was kind of like that was my identity. That's who I was. And I was going up the ranks. I was putting in those hours. There was weeks I was 70, 80 hours a week. And all of a sudden I'm struggling to remember basic, basic things. And I reached out to my doctors. I remember her telling me, like, I'm just stressed out. It was during COVID, to get some sleep. And it kept getting worse and worse. So I finally went in after so many virtual appointments because it wasn't urgent, right? And I finally went in and talked to her. And she, before I even finished explaining what was going on, she wrote me a prescription and handed me the prescription. And I said, "What's this?" Right? And it was a prescription for antidepressants. And she said, "You're just depressed. Take some medication. You'll be fine." And I have nothing against medication. I think everyone should do what is best for them. But I not once did I express that I was depressed or something was going on. And looking back where I've been, I know I was not depressed at that time. Um, and I broke down. I was tired of getting pushed to the side, tired of feeling like someone wasn't listening to me. I knew something was wrong and something snapped, and I had to finally advocate for myself, and realize the doctor doesn't know me better than I know myself. And so I really fought with her, to be honest with you, just to get a referral to a neurologist and a rheumatologist. I was suffering from migraines every single day, thunderclap headaches, and cluster headaches. And my migraines would last days, like 7, 14 days. I think I had 39-day streak of a migraine straight with no let up.
Wow.
And I felt for the first time like my neurologist listened to me and really heard what I was saying and was like, "This is very serious. How long have you been suffering with this?" And I had them for probably the last 15 years, but they had started getting bad in the last couple. And so I was explaining to him, like, I mean, I know everyone deals with migraines every day. And he's like, no, no, they don't. Like, that is not normal. And we started to get into it, and we went through all these procedures and tests, and come to find out that I had a spinal tap, and I have too much fluid in my spine, and it puts a lot of pressure on my brain, which is what causes some of the migraines. In addition to that, I have thunderclap headaches, which feels like an ice pick goes into the side of your head. The pain is excruciating. I would lose my vision. I didn't know what was going on. And it would be, the pain was gone as quick as it came. Sometimes 10 seconds to sometimes 90 seconds, and it was gone. Um, well, my first neurologist focused on um, the pressure. And when you have too much pressure in your brain that goes untreated, and I'm sure some people can talk more about this in depth, but you have the possibility of losing your vision because of the stress that it puts on, and you can go blind. And I think that was like the first little wake up call of like, oh, this isn't just in my head, this is serious. Like, what are we going to do? And that's when the conversation started happening, right? Like, I I make the majority of the money for our family. I drive to work every single day. Like, what are we going to do? It was during this time I was advised to stop driving. I was taken out of work completely. I was put on disability, and the neurologist felt like it wasn't within his scope. There was people who were more specialized, and I got switched over to another neurologist who ended up being amazing. And he was like, let's take a step back. Those thunderclap headaches, you can, like, every single time you get one of those, like, you can have an aneurysm and die. Like, this is serious. And so I went from being told, like, you're just depressed, to being told that I can go blind. And anytime I receive one of those headaches, there's a chance that I was just going to die right there on the spot. And I think that was like a wake up call. And then I spent months going through treatment and medications, staying in bed more than I got out of bed, feeling like I was with my son every day, but I wasn't really present. And then the money stopped, right? The disability was like, we can't keep paying you. You're on your own. And I remember being broken. And going back to my son, we always tell my son, he's a very intelligent little guy, but we always tell my son he can do and be anything he wants to be in life. And he repeated that back to me. He's like, it's okay, mommy. You can do anything you want to do. You can be anything you want to be. And it, like, that resonated so much. And a switch just flipped for me that, how can I tell my son he can do anything he wants with his life and be anything he wants, yet I'm just like laying down taking it. I'm not living up to that expectation. So I might be saying one thing, but I'm contradicting it in my actions every single day. And I think that just catapulted everything. And we just realized, like, time is precious. It's more important than any money that there is out there. Obviously, we have to make money in order to live a life and survive and do all those things. Um, but I needed to find a way to do something different. And yes, my husband absolutely stepped up, and we all know relationships aren't 50-50. They're 80-20, 100-0, whatever it may be. And he definitely was carrying the weight for all of us at the time. But I knew I had to live up to it, and I needed to make that change. So we'd already talked about what we were going to do different. That's when travel really became something that was important. And it was also, I was never going to go back to a job I was spending that much time away from my son. So we knew all these things were going to happen. And I had to find something I was passionate about that gave me fulfillment, because if I was going to spend time away, even whether it's in the other room or in front of a computer screen, it was going to be something that was valuable to me, right? And not just financially, but was fulfilling. And so that's how I started my business. It's how we began traveling the world. We made that leap. We sold everything we own. We live out of a suitcase. We rewear the same, 7 pieces of clothing or 7 tops, 7 bottoms every single week. We don't buy excess things, but we live a life we absolutely love. And it's a really cool feeling to walk through an airport or into a room with all these different people around you and not be envious of a single person. To walk in and go, that guy with that expensive business suit, I don't want his life. That person who has the designer bags, I don't want her life. Like, we are living the life we want. Um, and we took that leap, and I just don't think, honestly, we'll ever look back.
Man, listen, I'm sure for everyone who's listening, you just made some hairs stick up on their necks and everything. And I just want to make sure I heard this correct because I'm going to listen back to the episode. You didn't say that you have your son inside the suitcase, right?
I hope not.
I was like, wait a second. She said but I think you said he travels in a suitcase. Oh, he has his own suitcase, but I'm joking.
Yeah.
But so all of that, I am sure people out there listening and watching this are saying to themselves, like, yep, yeah, I've been there, or I know family members who've been there. They're working,
Mhm.
they're doing all that, especially when the health, like you were saying, that the health. And I say a lot of times, and at the beginning, I always start my episodes by saying societal norms, right? Society tells you you're supposed to do this. Why? Who? Society says you're not supposed to keep your Christmas tree up past X amount of days. Who? Why?
Mhm.
If it brings you happiness and joy, do it. And then I
Yeah.
end my episodes, I always say, make sure you live while you're alive, because
Yes.
I think too many of us go through life in like a zombie state, right? We
Yep.
wake up, go to work, wait for the weekend, do whatever, wake up. No, and I've got friends, I've got family members who they've never left their four corners, is what I call it, of their neighborhood. They've never
Mhm.
even left their city. They're afraid to do it, and I'm like, no, go live, man. And another big point you said, be your advocate, especially in the
Yes.
health system. Because I've talked to people on some episodes and I've even stated it myself. And I don't know if this was directly in your case, but I know as an African American, we're looked at, men and women, as if we have such superhuman strength and they look at us differently. And so sometimes it's nice to walk into an office and be seen by someone who may be familiar more with what you're going through. And because I experienced something along your lines, not as deep as yours, but when I was diagnosed with MS, they put me on an infusion once a month called Tysabri. But Tysabri was actually the wrong medicine for me, and it was giving me the possibility of speeding up my disease.
Mhm.
And within that, I have JC virus, which means that if it wakes up, in essence, it's dormant. But if it wakes up, I could have 1 week, I could have 5 days, I could have 3 days. But no one has ever lived past a year if it wakes up. And they were giving me the medicine that would have sped up that process. And I went to another doctor. I said, no, I got to see someone who I feel comfortable with. Went to another doctor, and then that doctor said, listen, I'm going to send you to two more so that you see that what I'm telling you is correct. Because he's understood that the
Mhm.
process I just went through was already traumatic. And
Yes.
all three of them concurred. And I was like, oh my goodness. So, yeah, um, I'm resonating and feeling all of that stuff out there like that. And so
Yeah.
now, if someone is listening to this though, and they hear your story and they heard you say, "Oh, Megan, you just made my whole world change," what are some things you can share to them to talk about? Because I can also understand how it could be hard, maybe, for people to let go of those things because we've been so conditioned that we need them. Was it a struggle for you to say, you know what, nope, I don't need 25 jeans or whatever? What can you say to them to maybe kind of help them along that line?
Yeah. So, real quick, going back to being your advocate, you no one else is going to be an advocate for you, especially when it comes to your health. You know your body so much more than, and I'm not saying doctors don't know. Obviously, they had so much education and they have so much experience that they do, but they don't know everything in a 15-minute conversation. And it's really important that you're your own advocate, or you bring someone in who can help advocate for you, because it does make all the difference in the world. And I don't know where I would be at if I didn't have that break. So I just want to touch on that. If something's wrong, say something. And but going back to your other thing, we joke about this all the time. I had a huge walk-in closet, and we only had one for our master bedroom, the primary bedroom, and it was packed with my clothes. Like, you couldn't fit another hanger in, and my husband had to use the spare bedroom to put his clothes in. And I had so much stuff and so many clothes that was extremely difficult for me. And that was probably the hardest part, letting it all go. And once I did, I literally can't stand having more than 7 pairs of pants or shorts combined now, because it feels overwhelming, because the sense of relief you get when you let all of the excess stuff go is unreal. And I don't even consider myself a minimalist, and I just couldn't imagine having it all again. But we lived for a while where we had like 3 cups, 3 forks, 3 plates, and like that's it. We did not have 4 forks because there was only 3 of us in our family. And not only did it teach us to be very disciplined with just tidying up, and you can't just grab an extra fork out of the drawer, but it just helped reset the mindset for us that less is more. And when you take out the outside noise, right? Because a lot of stuff just becomes noise to you, life just honestly gets so much easier. And as I was going through things with my, like, going through all the different medical things I was going through, taking out those stresses was honestly a huge, huge help for me when we were downsizing.
It's always the little things when we look at it that just really puts it in perspective for us. And, one of the questions that I ask sometimes, and matter of fact, I don't think I've asked you this, so I'm gonna ask you this here, and I'm gonna frame it, um, and then that way, people who've listened to me for a while, they've heard this. So if you hear it again, you'll understand this. All right, but let's take this perspective. Um, do you have maybe a favorite type of food or something that you just like to eat? You prefer to eat? What is that?
Definitely. Yeah. So it's weird. Well, let me tell you.
Okay.
But ground beef, feta, and avocado, I can eat every day for every meal.
Okay. Hey, no, that's your thing. You do it. I like that. Okay. So now let's just say, and in general terms, most people, okay, if you're
Mhm,
sitting at a table and you have your ground beef and avocado, and maybe there's, let's say, 4 people at the table, 2 on each side of you, okay,
mhm.
and one person just simply blows all over your food. Nothing to be like mean or disrespectful. They blow all over it. What is the first thought you have about the food? Do you continue eating it? Do you go like, oh no, and they're strangers, okay? What do you do with
Okay.
the food at that moment?
Um, yeah, I don't know that I would eat it. I don't
Okay.
I would struggle to take another bite.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Now, same scenario, strangers sitting right next to you, same table. The only thing that changes, instead of it being avocado with ground beef, now I might have to try that because you just mentioned it, so, is it's a birthday cake with candles. And that same person blows the cake with, or blows the candle out. Our first instinct is, yes, give me a piece of that cake,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's one of the things when I kind of heard that, I was like, whoa, my mind just opened up and my mind was blown. Oof,
Yes.
right? Because only
So
thing
true.
changed was the food that society told us it was
Was okay.
okay since childhood, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And so it's those kind of moments where I'm like, they tell you that you're supposed to work X amount of time, 40, 60 years, and then, but when do you get to enjoy? You're supposed to retire at 50 or 60, and but the uh, life expectancy is 70 something. So it's like, what, 10, 15 years? I'm like, no. And
Yeah.
then, we get to a point where we make, so I don't want to say excuses, but we make reasons of why we can't do those things
Hmm.
because we're so ingrained with, I need the newest, I need the fanciest, kind of like you said, not to be envious of the person with that expensive purse, because it's, you can put an expensive Louis and then a fake Louis next to each other, and for the most part, people won't be able to tell. You
Right.
know,
And I
so
think I think that's so important, and it's very, very hard. But to put it in perspective, I we went to Tazumal in northern Guatemala, and it's
ooh,
ruins. It's like pyramids and like holy ground. It's really, really cool experience. And anyways, we're sitting there, and we're climbing up to the top of these pyramids, right? Like we not on like a pathway, like we're literally climbing up the stones to the top of this
wow,
pyramid. And we get down and we are taking pictures, and this wife asks her husband, like, you've always wanted to go, are you going to try to climb up it? And he goes, I would never be able to get back down, right? Because these are
okay,
old big stones, right? So somebody who may be a little bit older would not be able to
gotcha.
navigate them. And you could just tell he was so bummed out. And she's like, you've been waiting 20 years to finally come here, right?
Mm,
And so it's like that just hit us. Like we are capable right now. Are we going to
yeah,
be capable in 20 or 40 years when we should have retired, when we should have been able to travel? Because this isn't
yeah,
like you just hop on a plane and you can get there. You're traveling to get to this place, right? You're
wow,
taking a ferry or a bus ride, or like it's not easy. And so it's like they went through all that and they couldn't experience it to the level they would have wanted to because they waited. And I
yeah.
just don't know that it's worth it, but I understand what stops people. I just wish more people knew there was another way, you know?
Yeah, is that fear, right? And part of that, I think, is that we pass it on, right?
Mm.
Because my grandparents were afraid of something, and their grandparents were afraid, and there was a point in my life where I stopped and I said, you know what, I released the anger that I had towards my mom and the rest of them, and because they did what they did because that's what they knew. They
Right.
didn't. For example, my granddad used to tell me, save money, and if you can't buy it with cash, then you can't. You don't need it. But times have changed. Credit is, kind of thing. Saving money, you get 0.00002% or whatever on it in the bank.
Exactly.
So, but for him back then, that was safety, right? So
Yes.
we have to adjust. But yeah, fear, if, but then I don't ever want to put my fear onto my son. So, for example, like right now, my son comes in from school. Dad, let me tell you about my day. He had a rough day. Hey, sit down. Tell me about it. Let's see how we can resolve it if we can. But I couldn't do that as a kid. I could
Right.
not go because I was a young black boy, and if I cried or anything, I was weak. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm going to change. I'm changing now because it takes about 3 generations to fully change, something.
Yeah.
And I started thinking because I would always hear this generational curse. And
Hmm.
again, that's one of those things that I don't believe in because no one took eye of newt and pig's tail and put it in a pot and stirred it up and put a curse on you. It's
Right.
generational choices. So
Yes.
we can make the choice to change. And I'm working to instill in my son, it's okay to cry. It's okay to
Hmm.
talk and express your feelings. Don't hold it in. Because I grew up angry as a kid. But man, there's so many different things we can dive into
I
in
know.
that. So, but anything else you maybe want to share with the audience if they want to maybe find you or anything? I again, I don't want to get too deep into your business, but if someone does want to
Yeah.
reach out to you because hey, that money does continue helping supply the
Yeah.
lifestyle. I was looking at your website right here. if you would talk about it just
Yeah.
for a moment, just tell someone about you, about how they can reach you, or anything, if that's fine.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is my email's right on there, and there's a contact page as well. Anyone who wanted to reach out and talk about how to get started, I'm a executive virtual assistant, and I mostly focus with consultants and financial advisors. But anyone who's looking to get started and to start and become an entrepreneur and do something for themselves, schedule some time with me. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about how you can get started, about travel, about how to make the transition, the things you don't expect. I would be happy to talk through all of it because I wish we had someone to bounce ideas off of instead of doing it alone.
Yes, that is so funny because my wife and I, we are serial entrepreneurs. I did a video reel or something the other day, and I said, listen, we've made a lot of money in business and we've lost a lot of money, right? Because we just
Yeah,
started it. But it would be so nice to have someone to just bounce some ideas off of and be like, oh, you know what? Let's try this together. That, oh, I did that before, it didn't work, or maybe tweak it. And so those little
yeah,
things are so great. And matter of fact, we just started another one, a coffee business, because my wife loves
nice.
coffee. She loves coffee. And I was adding it up, and I was like, babe, we're spending this much on Starbucks pretty much every day. And so why don't we just do this then? So I went and bought her an espresso maker, right? So now
Yeah,
I make coffee in there. And I was like, oh, they do all this fancy designs. And now I'm trying to learn that. So, but anyways, we started that business. And it's one of our vices that we
yeah,
love doing because it instills in our son about understanding the idea of exploring, right?
yeah,
Not to be afraid to start the business. I hear people say, "Well, what if I fail?" And I say, "Well, what if you don't? What
exactly.
if you don't? Right? If you fail, you fail.
Yeah,
Have a plan to do it." So, I mean, I sincerely appreciate this, and I want to give you last words, any final words that you may want to share for anyone who's out there listening. And this is my ideal person who I talk to, right? I talk to the
yeah,
person who's sitting in their vehicle as they're heading or they're driving to work in their vehicle. They get to work and now they're
mhm,
sitting in their vehicle, listening to the music, and they're really finding any reason not to get out the car to go into work. They have reached that point of their job or their life where they're like, I don't want to be here. That's who I talk to. But who would you talk to out there that's listening to this that resonates with what you're saying? The floor is yours.
thank you. I think the biggest thing is I've been there. I remember even before some of the health stuff came up of having that feeling of like, this is it. Like, this is what my life looks like for the next 30 years. We might have new cars, new phones, new whatever. We might have a bigger house or a smaller, who knows? But this is it. Like, this is what I can expect. I promise you, I was there. It's not it. You 100% can make the change and create anything you want out of the life that you have. But it's going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, and it's going to be scary. It's going to be really, really scary. And you're going to constantly question if you're doing the right thing. But I think our happiness and the happiness of our family and the time that we have is honestly the most valuable thing in this world. So if you feel like a change needs to be made, if you feel like you're done doing the same thing every day because you can't imagine doing it, 2,000 more days in your life, make the change because you will not regret it in the end.
Yes, yes, yes. And I jokingly say sometimes that I have quit what I was working on 364 times. And it's
Mm-hmm.
that one time that I did not quit that
Yep.
restarted the cycle, right? So every day, that imposter syndrome, I'm like, what am I doing here? Are people going to
Yes.
buy this? Are people going to really listen to me? And all you
Yeah.
got to do is be 10, 20% different than others to
Yep.
show them that, there's someone out there who is in a spot where you can help them. So I appreciate
Yeah.
this. I want you to hold on for me for 1 second. I'm gonna end this up, but I'm gonna come back so you and I can finish talking up. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Ladies and gentlemen, hey, thank you all once again for coming to another episode of Redesign Your Life, the podcast again that is about showing you that you can explore the world and it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to express yourself. You all know me. I am someone who just wants to see you shine and to grow. And just remember that I want you to continue to live while you are alive.